Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm here with Mandy, an Etsy print-on-demand expert and fellow YouTuber. Mandy, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's great to be here.
Yes, it's great to finally have you on the channel. Um, Honestly, I love getting to know people's stories. I do not know how you got started with print-on-demand. Like, I found out about it through Reddit randomly, and it was like a make money online subreddit, and the rest was history. So what is your origin story?
So, my background was always a little bit different because I kind of happened into it. So, I've always been kind of in the entrepreneurship world by career, by school. I was an HR professional and I was, made my way through the leadership roles. And along the way, I had lots of different side hustles, side businesses. At one point, I was making cupcakes for a few years on the side. And I actually had a handmade business that I started on Etsy in 2017. So I was doing that for quite a while and eventually took that full time in, was kind of on the downward spiral of the pandemic. So it was like 2021, I think. And I went full time with that handmade business and nothing to do with print on demand or apparel. I was making natural skincare. But that was kind of my first step into like doing entrepreneurship full time. And so a year into that, I was kind of in that place where I'm like, I feel like I need another creative outlet. So, I was on TikTok at that point, kind of exploring things like, well, maybe I'll make clothing and apparel, or maybe I'll make these different designs. But I was on TikTok, it was, doing the heat press, the vinyl, the, heat transfer. So I'm like, I'll do that. That was not my best idea ever. And it was horrible. I hated every second of it. I'm
I have a
like,
t-shirt press too,
I
all right?
can't, I'm not, no, I'm not doing this. I was, in this small room. Imagine this room with like filled with like sweatshirts and gels and a heat press and me in here just like sweating with a heat press. I was like, that's not going to work. But then that's kind of how I discovered, again, through scrolling, I'm like, what are other people doing? I was creating things and I happened on a TikTok video and it was, print on demand and no inventory and, your designs and people are making six figures a year with no inventory. And again, for me, coming from a handmade background in this small room, with my heat press and, heat transfers, the idea of creating whatever you want as much as you want without ever having to touch a thing completely just like blew my mind. Like I had no idea that was a thing. I'm like, what rock have I been living under? So I dove into it completely head first, as I do with so many things when it comes to this, when I'm learning something new and, discover this whole world of all of these different products. And so kind of went on that deep dive, made some early mistakes of trying to make too many things because I was a little too excited and just wanted my designs on all of the things without any research along the way. So eventually figured it out. But fast forward, once I kind of did the research, figured out how it all works, I knew I wanted to be on Etsy because I'd been there before. I knew it had advantages of being a marketplace. And so once I was able to do that, I was able to scale relatively quickly. I hit the six-figure mark, I hit 100,000 within the span of about 10 months. And then, that was in mid 2022 was kind of when I really started diving in. So about 10 months from there. And then it was, all uphill from there in terms of just seeing that continued growth and learning. But it was definitely something I fell into. And now it's like, I can't imagine doing anything else, especially from a product-based standpoint, which is what I've always loved. I tried digital for a while. I have dabbled in KDP, Amazon KDP, never could get into Amazon merch. I was too late to that game, but, tried a bunch of different things. And again, always kind of landed on this concept of I like having physical products, but the idea of never having to touch them and still being able to create as much as I want, like that is what I became completely obsessed with.
Yeah, and print on demand, like basically no costs too to start. It's insane that we get this opportunity. I always feel bad
I
for
know.
like,
That's why I tell people, I'm like, no, you don't understand. And I think it's hard for some people, like if you haven't done like the physical packing things yourself, fulfilling yourself. Like I said, I have a whole handmade business that I was doing full time and still run a little bit on the side, where it's like, if you haven't done that and experienced that and had to, handle all of that yourself, to then realize what an opportunity this is and to scale so much faster. That's what I think blew my mind is, I, where I'm at now with like my print on demand shop that I still have, it'll hit 500. I'm shy at the moment, but it'll hit 500,000 this year at some point during the year. And that's, I started in mid 2022. So that's less than probably 3 years to get to 500,000. That's of twice as much that I've ever conceivably made, like in the handmade world. I did it twice as fast, right? Because you can scale so much faster when you're not having to worry about inventory or doing all of the other things when it comes to having to do it all yourself. So I always tell people, I'm like, I completely drink the Kool-Aid when it comes to print on demand. Like, I think it's the coolest thing ever that we get to do this because there's so much opportunity with it if you want to run a business with products.
Absolutely. And I had a similar story. Like, I had this website I built in college. I was like, I need to monetize this better. So I'm going to sell products related to it. Filled my parents' basement with a bunch of stuff and like made a few orders, like less than 10. And it just sat there for years. And I was like, this isn't the way. And like when I would make an order, this is how little I knew. I would like run it to the post office and I would lose money because of how expensive shipping was if you didn't like buy it through Shopify or whatever you use.
Yep.
And it's so funny how like in this life, like knowledge really can make the world of difference, because I just didn't know any better back then. And I had to kind of go on my own journey of learning the hard way of basically what not to do first before what to do. And I'm so much better off now for having, put in the sweat equity. But it's just funny how like so many of us have similar stories.
Yeah, it really is. It's fascinating. And the things that you don't have to worry about with, when you're not dealing with inventory, when you're not dealing with the cost of that too. I mean, think about how expensive that is. I still have a sweatshirt set, blank sweatshirt set, never sold. Some of them still have designs on them that I pressed thinking they were going to be the greatest thing ever, and they didn't sell. Whereas with print on demand, you spin up a listing, you have this idea for a design, you add it. If you're on Etsy, you're out 20 cents for a listing, test it. Even if you want to build it further, that's what I always tell people. I'm like, even if you don't want to stay on Etsy and you want to have a Shopify, like I have a Shopify for my handmade business, test it out on Etsy first. Like do all of that, low-hanging fruit, inexpensive testing there first. And then you have a proof of concept if you do want to kind of build a big brand around it or do something more and have your own platform. But there's just so many different ways that you can do it when you have that ability and opportunity to build something like that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You don't usually hear like the Shopify gurus talk as much about testing for almost for free, 20 cents on Etsy, or, Amazon Seller Central is 40 a month, or Amazon merch, if you're lucky, that is free, and you can essentially, instead of like feeding the Facebook, whatever we're calling it, algorithm, infinite dollars to get in front of people, you can basically figure out what's working. Or you could just, obviously grab a research tool and go look at other people's designs that are currently selling and basically just jump to the straight of the line, the front of the line. So especially nowadays,
I mean, there's so many tools and different ways that you can do it. I mean, even in just the short amount of time that I've been part of it, I mean, it's continued to grow and evolve. I know before we started, recording, that we were talking about like AI, even like it's going to continue to evolve. I don't think, we'll ever get to a place where that opportunity ends. Will there be more people coming, coming to the mat to play the game? Sure. But opportunity ends up being endless. You might have to work a little harder sometimes, but if you really want to do it, I think there's still so much opportunity out there for people who want to build a business like this.
Absolutely. And it made me want to ask you, like, how much has your business changed, or not your business, but maybe your approach to running it since the beginning? I'm sure, I've had a crazy arc where it's like I start especially with the YouTube channel, people find me. I don't have to find them. And they're like, hey, I have this tool. And I'm like, wait, this tool does what? And then I implement it. And now all of a sudden I've saved myself, X number of hours a week. Have you had any crazy breakthroughs along the way to like how you run your business?
I think the research tools have gotten better and continued to evolve, which I think is super helpful to be able to use that insight. For me, I think AI in the long run is going to be really big, and I think how people use it. And I don't necessarily mean like just in the designs. I know lots of people use AI for designs, and I use it to help sometimes with my designs. And, I'm not one who typically will make an entire design just with AI, but I love using it for elements or to kind of get it started or as a component of a design. But I use it in other ways. So when I'm doing like niche research or trying to respond to a customer service thing where I'm like, I don't know how to be nice to this person right now. Like I need a very neutral lens, you know, I need to, come up with some different phrases. Like one of the things that I love, has kind of been my little hack with AI and, even just designs and creating things that resonate with a specific customer identity is, prompting it and having it give me like text-based phrases that are like super connected to whoever that target, buyer is. Like I love using it in that way because if you prompt it or if you kind of get it to train to spit out the right thing, like I can get some really good phrases. And I've had some bestsellers even that are simple text-based that came from my ChatGPT that didn't exist when I started. Before it was I almost had to rely on, my design skills or at the beginning lack thereof, because I'm not a graphic designer at all by trade. Had to rely on that and have a lot of really bad designs in the beginning. Whereas now, you can kind of circumnavigate that a little bit thanks to just this evolution that's really happened. And like you said, even just tools or new AI design platforms, even it seems like kind of like you said, every day in my inbox, I've got either a new tool or some new AI image generation. And they're getting better and better. Like I know when AI images, and design generation first came out, it was not great. Like I said, I don't use it for everything, but I think we'll continue to see that evolve. And I think it's just been really interesting, along the way. Because like I said, it literally did not exist when I first started.
Yeah, so much has changed. I remember getting started in like early 2017 and like I had been using Photoshop for over 10 years at that point. So you would think that I would be decent at design, but I totally was not decent. But good enough, I would say, to like if I had a vision, I could kind of bring it together. But yeah, like my initial designs are a complete embarrassment. And I would definitely not want to be like showing them to anybody.
Mine are gone, like wiped out, deleted, like
Yeah,
not
delete them.
even sitting. A lot of people will leave them sitting in there, like, deactivated in Etsy. I'm like, no one should know that these ever existed.
Yeah, I need to delete them too. Like, oops, just that one like fraction of a percentage of my hard drive is gone forever. Oops.
And that's what I tell people though, right? Is we all go through that evolution. We all have our day one in our journey, and we all kind of have to suck at first before we get good. You have to, go through that process and learn along the way. But, that didn't stop you from getting to where you are. It didn't stop me from getting where I am. It didn't stop people who've made way more money than I have, along the way. For me, it started out as something I was just doing in small little pockets of time outside of, pretty much running a whole other business full time. So it's like, if I can do that with no experience and figure it out along the way, other people can too.
Absolutely. And I think we might have like some sort of an advantage. It sounded like we both had that like entrepreneurial bug. But if you don't, if anybody's watching you, you don't necessarily think that you have it now. I think it's something that you could develop. Like I would just be listening to podcasts, and in my life, in my like close circle, like I didn't have anybody that was, I don't know, that could relate, I guess is a nice way of putting it. Like everybody else was content with 9 to 5, and that's all good. So I had to kind of like fake it, like put on YouTube videos, podcasts, etc. And kind of instill that like flame inside me. Cause yeah, like everything, this journey has its ups and downs. Like, do you have any tips for anybody that's kind of going through maybe a downswing?
I think that's a big part of it, is just knowing that if you keep taking that one next step forward, like you will keep making progress. I always tell people in my group, I'm like, just keep taking action. Even if it feels like you're not going anywhere, you keep putting in the reps and you'll get there. And I think that's, just that natural evolution. I mean, I still have days where I'm just not feeling it or not having a great day, and you'll continue to have that in your journey. But I think remembering, even sometimes like the why of why you're doing it. For me, being an entrepreneur and having, different ways of being an entrepreneur has allowed me to, I don't work a 9 to 5. I don't report to anybody else other than myself. We ended up, retiring my husband. So he doesn't report to anybody else. You might argue that he reports to me, but at the end of the day, that's a big why. And for neither of us to have to go back to that, that's a huge reason. For some people, it's, wanting an extra stream of income. It's wanting to pay off debt, whatever that is, finding that thing even that you can hold on to on those days where you don't necessarily have that motivation, I think is a big, big part of it. And, also just remembering that, everyone has those ups and downs. Sometimes it can feel really alone. I think that's the benefit of having communities or, other people that you can lean on, even if it's not like your kind of inner circle necessarily, that you can lean on and say, is this normal, or what should I be doing to kind of get through this rough patch, can be super helpful with that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were talking about how the communities are becoming more and more prevalent these days. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And, I guess in ours is like, digital entrepreneur stuff, but I'm sure there's that school platform is super cool. There's so much stuff on there that is really cool to check out, even though neither of us are on it yet.
One day, and I think, just finding that place that works for you, and having that place where you can go and, even if it's not, I think everyone's individual, like what works for me sometimes doesn't always work for other people. But the other thing that, I've done is, having goals that you can work towards. So even if you're not feeling, motivation, if you're not seeing results right away, it's what am I working towards? Like, again, what's that kind of next one thing that I can do to get to where I want to be? And it's just kind of doing that repetitively. It kind of naturally builds in that discipline almost of just keep going through the things, lean on those steps that will get you there and those actions. And then the results and kind of what you're working towards becomes that byproduct versus trying to, focus on all the things that you can't control. Or, we always hear getting frustrated with the Etsy algorithm or the sales going up and down. We can't control those things. We can only control, what I hear so much frustration from people, or where they tend to get stuck is, all these things that are not in their control. Focus on what you can control, and the journey will be that much better because you'll realize that there's actions that you can take. You can keep working on listings. You can add more. You can lean into your research. You can take a break if you need to. You get to control that, right? There's so many things within our control that we can lean on when the rest of the journey feels like it's not going necessarily the way we want it to, or when we have our hard days, or when Etsy changes the algorithm again, right?
Now, what you just said, like, seriously resonates with me. Like, because what you said is focus on what you control and set goals, and then let success be the byproduct. And I've never heard, I don't think anybody say it quite like that, but that's totally how I think my journey was. Like, I always had the drive, and it's like, if I could, even on the busiest day, just post like a few new products for me, it was like Amazon Seller Central. Cause I got my start with FBA, and then I learned, I could post print on demand here as well using Printful. And even if I was just posting a few products a day, I was like, I'm a little bit closer to my ultimate goal. You know, I'm getting there in little micro steps. And I could totally get what you're saying. The gamification too, that is like, it's almost like tricking yourself into feeling like you accomplished something, even if you're not making sales yet. You know, like Amazon
Right.
Works does it better than anybody, where they give you 10 designs, upload one a day, you hit 10, now you're maxed out, make some sales, get to 25. I think they do it the best, but it sucks that like, no, there's not other, I mean, it's probably good that they don't impose restrictions on us when you open an Etsy account, but like if they did say, hey, you're a beginner, like post 10 products, one per day at a time, I think a lot more people maybe would feel like, okay, I'm starting to get it. You know, by the 10th time, you're doing a lot better than the first.
It's incremental. And I think it's continuing to kind of chip away at that and carve it out, because every iteration, right, you're learning something new. And I think that's, for me, one of the things that I did early on was I pushed, like I went all in the very beginning. So, I like to work from an efficiency standpoint because, again, I didn't have a whole lot of time to spend on it. I work in, batches of things. So I'm batching designs, I'm batching mockups, I'm batching getting it, onto the platforms. And so for me, it was just doing those small little things repeatedly and consistently gets you to the point where you are better. So it may not feel like it at first, but it's like, kind of like, I'm sure the same theory with Amazon applies, is you're doing it incrementally. And I think it's naturally building in that consistency too, because if you're consistently adding, you're consistently getting to kind of that next level, but you're also learning along the way, because the more you're doing that and the more you're repeating and building, you're getting incrementally better every single time as well. And so I'll hear people like, oh, I've hit, 100 listings on Etsy, or I've hit 200 listings on Etsy. Great. What have you learned along the way? Look back at your first design. Your first design compared to your 200th design is probably a bit different. You hopefully learned some things along the way and got better. Now go make that, the next. Keep going. Look at the data. What is it telling you? Do you have any listings that are starting to get favorites or sales? Great. Make more of those. If you got no results, if you got nothing, that's the other thing we hear, right? I'm not getting views, or I'm not getting sales. Lack of results can be a result in and of itself. So that tells me, go back to your research. Keep practicing your design skills. Have you done your research on your keywords to make sure people are actually looking for these things? It's all those little things that we can look for and pay attention to make our next iteration, our next step, our next listing, our next action that much better. And the more you do that, again, the results will come naturally. I tell people, if you keep doing that, if you keep incrementally building your listings, be consistent, consistently learn and pay attention to those clues along the way, you will eventually get better. And as you get better, the results will come, and then they'll speak for themselves. You don't have to, stop tying your success to these numbers and things like that you can't control. Tie your success and your progress to the things that you're controlling. And even that alone can make you feel even kind of that intrinsic motivation that much stronger, because you look back and say, I accomplished that listing goal, or I accomplished getting that much research time in, or I accomplished having some success in this particular niche. So now I can carve that out, or, whatever it might be. That's what you can celebrate. And then eventually you'll have the sales to back it up as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like that's a life hack in general, focusing on what you control. And I think
I
like,
always tell people, I'm like, control your controllables. I should trademark that, because I'm like, it's
that's
just
so good.
my
That's so good.
mantra.
Yeah. Yeah. I had mantras in my head too, for real. Like my whole journey, when it was like just me early on, and I don't know if I'm going to be like successful, I just had similar things just popping in my head. Like, but yeah, it's like the biggest life hack, because I feel like now more than ever, there are more things competing for our attention. And like the selling point of why we should care is like almost always some often very like narrative based thing that like we cannot exert any control over, other than choosing to like give it our time and attention or not, and I just say like, man, I unplug and I focus on my own domain and like getting to my goals.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I tell people. I'm like, the name of like my channel, right? Simply POD, like the whole Simply thing, like that was there for a reason, right? I'm all about like keep it simple. You don't need to overwhelm yourself. Like focus on creating products that get seen, right? The keyword research, get loved, meaning they connect with someone and they want it, and then, get sold, right? Or optimized so that someone hopefully says yes. I mean, at the end of the day, keep it simple. There's so many, like you said, especially now. I mean, I call it shiny objects, right? It's this new product, this new system, this new tool, this new, fill in the blank. It seems like every single day there's something. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And I think for me, that was one of the biggest things. And I think even just as a creator, that's how people ask me like how I got to having a channel. I mean, I feel like that's a big part of it was I saw people getting so overwhelmed by trying to do like all of the things all of the time.
Yep.
And try to implement, 5 different strategies that they heard about. I'm like, any one of them can work. You need to find your focus and just keep it simple and let go of that overwhelm, because it's that overwhelm and all of those distractions and all of that trying to do too many things. That's ultimately what's holding a lot of people back, is that. And when you start kind of carving that out and eliminating some of that and really focus on the things that move the needle and actually get results, you'll actually start to see those results and have control over that a lot faster and find less frustration because you're not trying to be in all of the places.
And reduce some subscriptions.
Oh, I tell you, I mean, I'm there too. I have the same problem, in sometimes different ways, but it's something that I feel like also happens a lot to people who are natural kind of entrepreneurs. I feel like we are naturally like attracted to different things. Like, how can I use that? How is that different? I could do something with that. And it happens, but there comes a point where it's like, okay, what am I actually trying to accomplish? Like, what do I actually need to focus on? And when we can do that, that's when we start to make that progress and, feel, the motivation even from that progress.
Absolutely. For me, I was a web developer in my past life. So I used to just build whatever it was that I wanted. And that would take obviously much longer. And I could just tinker forever. So I started my first thing on like Teachable, and I switched it to this newer platform called Podia that's just like all in one and simple. Like even if I want to go crazy, I can't. They don't let me. They don't let me write any code. And I was like, you know what? I want it that way because I don't want to be spending a month on aesthetics, that could easily break too. Because as soon as you start tinkering and they change something, it could just bring everything down. So yeah.
In my project management world, way back in the day, we called that scope creep.
That was so bad. Yeah. Cool. Well, it's been great talking to you. Is there anything like, I know you do coaching, you've got a YouTube channel. I'll link to everything. You said you had a startup guide. I'll link to that in the description as well. Is there anything you want to like share or plug that I didn't ask about?
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest thing. I have my channel where, again, my goal is to try and keep things as simple as possible and help people find the right things to focus on. And, one of the things that I'll give you to link for everyone is that 30-day growth guide. And it's connected to a video that I did, and that's all kind of linked together with that and what I'll give you for the description. But it's one of the tools that I've created to really help people find a focus, right? Especially if you're just getting started. That's the hardest part, is find a focus, make a plan, then follow it, and then think about how you can kind of use that as your momentum and trajectory. So I'll make sure you have that. It'll also have information for anyone who might want to connect further with my Simply Thrive membership group. Like Ryan said, I do coaching as well with templates, resources, monthly calls, all that good stuff. So we have a lot of fun, and it's just one of those ways that, again, we can continue to help this community of entrepreneurs who want to build their own businesses.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put that in the description. Well, Mandy, it's been great getting to know your story, and you've given some really good advice that definitely resonates with me. Even though I think like if you zoom out, my stuff looks super complicated, but I swear like I dial it into where it's very simple. Like I'm a true solopreneur. I don't have employees or like VAs. The fact that I've been able to
Me
do what I've
neither.
done,
I'm right there with you.
yeah, keeping it simple. Literally, it's only possible if you keep it simple. So I'm a
Yeah.
believer.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. It was so great to chat with you.